Welcome everybody to another episode of the Lunch Table Podcast, and in this video we're going to give you our review for Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, now playing in theaters. Definitely check it out after this review. What an explosion of a film. It certainly went boom. I think it's a cinematic masterpiece. We'll get right into it. Beware of spoilers. Dylan, let's start with your thoughts.
It was the bomb.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's Nolan, man. He never misses a mark with his films. He does his homework. He crafts such good biopics, and he really does his research when it comes to these types of films. They feel like not even boring, but they just feel like a very mature and very like almost like documentary style of filming. But with that, cinematic flair, it still feels like a movie, and it's still entertaining. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Cillian Murphy, of course, he nailed it out of the ballpark as Oppenheimer, and I loved his story so much. And just seeing this, just looking at this cast, man, it's such an ensemble cast, and I love that every actor that he pulled in felt like they had a purpose, right? It's not just like we just pulled this person because they're famous, right? They actually like lent something to the story, right? And they added to this huge tale because I mean, Oppenheimer is obviously a historical figure, but like when you get down to the details, and because I'm not sure like how accurate the story is. If you guys are history buffs, let us know how close to the actual story this was. But for the most part, it felt like it was actually very true to the original events that happened. And it feels like everybody's out to get Oppenheimer. It feels like, it's funny. He's such a hero, but like everybody's out against him in this movie, and in a way, he himself also, I think, kind of villainizes himself in a bit because of the consequences that we see. And, of course, this goes into like the history of the creation of the atomic bomb, but it also feels like Nolan is kind of like, telling us as viewers and telling us as, people that, more to like world leaders, like pay attention. Right. Like, because this could lead to bigger events. I mean, obviously, the Cold War happened, and we've had a lot of wars since World War II. And for the most part, nuclear programs have been pretty safe. But, like I always think of like what could happen, especially now with the Ukraine thing happening. Like, how close are we to the inevitable? Right. Mm-hmm. So I think this movie kind of lends a little bit of a cautionary tale to us. But it's still at its core a great biopic. But let's get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I commend Nolan for his sense also of pacing. This movie was 3 hours long, but you don't feel it whatsoever. It's fast paced in a way. Every scene, shot by shot, it's about 25 seconds, and then they switch, and it is consistent music. I think this is the first Nolan movie, correct me if I'm wrong, without Hans Zimmer. Who scored this movie?
I think it was Ludwig Göransson, who did Mandalorian.
That's amazing, because I think he did a phenomenal job. Although, I mean, I think that's the common criticism with Nolan films is like sometimes the music overpowers the audio or the dialogue. So you definitely will counter that here. Especially there were so many sound effects with like rumbles here and there. They conveyed a tone that it was very tense through the whole thing. There was no easy moment. Everything was just very like Oppenheimer had to go through a lot of stuff, but also the other characters as well. And no one really was at ease, and they were a race against the clock too. And I like how they showed different perspectives, or not different perspectives, but different characters. So that were also developing their own bombs as well. So it was really cool to see that Oppenheimer was really connected to all these other scientists and whatnot, or physicists, whatever. So that was really cool. Also 70 millimeter film, and yeah, you could definitely see it here. It's a beautiful movie. Of course, everything with Nolan is very filmic. It looks amazing. I like how Nolan deals with larger than life ideas with each movie, and these characters are kind of like this bystander. So it's interesting to see that Oppenheimer is at center of this big thing, this big idea, because it's not just a bomb. It has a psychological effect as well, and it'll change the world. And they definitely went back and forth on that notion, and I appreciated that because it got me thinking, because they didn't really say of course it's bad, but they didn't really say like making this is absolutely bad. It could either be a good thing or a bad thing. It's a matter of perspective too. But at the end, one thing that I think honed in on the actual truth was at the very end when Oppenheimer said that in a way he did destroy the world. He said that to Albert Einstein, and then they showed B-roll of all these missiles that were, I don't know which era these missiles were in, probably the present day. And there was like this B-roll kind of was like dreamlike, and it showed the missiles launching in the air and crashing down, and it actually was tearing up the earth. And I heard this movie didn't use CGI. If they really didn't, this is amazing, because the way how they had so many shots of, they even showed stars, like B-roll stars just imploding. It was amazing. I don't know how they shot that practically. I would love to see a behind the scenes footage of that, because I tell you what, they sure went to work. Let's talk a little bit about the cast of characters here, because we have a lot of well-known faces in this cast. I did not expect that either. I went into this movie actually a little bit blind. I wasn't really looking at the trailers that much. I wanted to come in surprised. Even if it's a historical event, I never actually really delved into the history. So seeing all these people was definitely a pleasure to see everybody back. Like Rami Malek. I love Bohemian Rhapsody, so that was cool to see him here. Let me get your thoughts anyways on these cast of characters.
Well, a surprise for sure, but was it the Palpatine quote? I always mess up the quote.
Yeah, I know. You mess up, and you think I know the quote.
Yeah.
Shit.
Well, you guys know what I'm talking about. You know, it was a pleasant surprise to see everybody here, especially because we do so many movie reviews and we've seen most of these faces. Yeah, it's like they pulled everybody. Like, that's the cool thing about Nolan is like he's not afraid to like obviously there's some people like Gary Oldman or Cillian Murphy that, you know, are known for being in his types of movies. But then you have like people like Dane DeHaan, Devin Bostic, Josh Peck. I kept thinking like, Drake, where's the bomb? But that's a serious finale. But yeah, it's cool. And Florence Pugh, of course, she played the love interest. Rami Malek was in this too. So yeah, it's for sure a pleasant surprise to see like, you know, all these different great actors, especially now. I mean, with the writer strike happening, it's you know, great to see this ensemble cast. And like I said, everybody had a part to play, and it feels very lived in. And it's like, and the great thing about this movie too is that, you know, Nolan, I think Nolan is probably known for a lot of his more like action-y films, like Dark Knight or Inception. But here there's not that much action because it's more of a biopic. Like I said, it's more and we don't even see like shots of like World War II or anything. It's mainly just about, you know, this project, right? So I love the dialogue scene. It feels like Succession, where like the actual dialogues are the battlegrounds, right? And you see like this trial happening. And I also love like the different back and forth that he plays with, like the black and white and then back to color. I think he said like the black and white was more objective, and then the color scenes were more subjective, so it's like more from Oppenheimer's point of view. So I love that play. I love how he uses like certain techniques in filming to convey certain characters and how they're feeling and their different perspectives. I think that's a great way of you know, shooting film.
Yeah, and it also helped the audience to, because it wasn't linear, a lot of the scenes, so it helped the audience gain some ground on, okay, this takes place here, this takes place there, so you could move along with the story. Because again, the actual movie is really fast paced, and once we move past the actual test of the bomb, then it goes to the trial of Oppenheimer and all this drama like instantly, and then we get to the actual ending, and it ends on like, I think, a really strong note, and it really makes you question things. And I always like that when movies do that, you know, because I feel like that's really like art. You have to kind of decipher it, even if this is like a biopic or whatever. You still decipher something. Again, it's a huge idea. This guy is a larger-than-life figure, and he kind of knows it. And I love Cillian Murphy's performance in this movie because you could see it through his eyes. There's a lot of actors that work well with their eyes, but unfortunately they go unrecognized. And like, for example, Pedro Pascal, I think as Joel, you could see that there's a lot of pain behind his eyes. And the same thing with Cillian Murphy's eyes. It was amazing just seeing the eye performance there, because he realizes later on, it's like, what did I actually do? I'm confused, you know, and do I deserve to be punished, you know?
Yeah, what what did you also think of Robert Downey Jr. in this movie?
Yeah, it's so crazy to finally see him back. I think he was after Iron Man or Endgame, wasn't he in like Dr. Dolittle or something like that? And
Something
after
like
that, I don't know. Yeah, after that, I didn't see him again. So seeing him here is awesome. I feel like Tedro saying it's a treat. You're a treat. But yeah, it was really great. Of course, he's a wonderful actor. I think he played the part of Lewis Strauss really well. And he was definitely like conniving, sneaky, and they didn't really like, again, if you don't know about the history, then you go into this thinking it's like almost like a fiction, right? And so you don't really know these characters. And so I didn't know he was actually bad at first, and then later on things are revealed. And I love the way how Nolan places these scenes to give you small increments of this revelation that this character is trying to screw over Oppenheimer. No matter what, at the end of the day, Oppenheimer kind of got screwed by the end. So his character, I think, yeah, was basically the villain. It also was a task at hand. Which is funny because making the bomb, there's a lot of conversation whether it's ethical or moral. And I feel like there's two sides to the story. It's a lot more complex, and I like how they tackled it as well. And so I know that this movie, I think, was adapted, or they adapted it from this novel. I can't really quite remember the name, so you guys just write it down in the comments below. So I think there was a lot of things where, a novel, instead of being like an autobiography or something like that, sometimes these type of novels, they lend more of an artistic flair and a metaphorical one, and also a philosophical one. And that was all packed into one movie. And you didn't even feel it. And that's amazing. And so I think hands down, he did an amazing job tackling all that. And then plus the characters' intricacies, like what are they feeling as well. Florence Pugh, I think a lot of people are wondering how was she in this movie? Obviously she's really famous now. She was great. I didn't know that they were together first before Emily Blunt's character. And unfortunately, Florence Pugh's character, Jean Tatlock, she committed suicide. And then I liked how they tackled that too, because it was like she committed suicide, but they showed some shots where there was a hand pushing her head down. So it's like alluded to maybe somebody actually offed her. Right. And there were some talks with Matt Damon's character. He jokingly said that if some guy reveals something, we'll kill him. And it just shows like how much at stake is here, right? And in the secrecy as well, there were spies involved. They handled so many things all in one film, and it was like boom, 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 and it was perfect. Like you didn't feel it was jaunting or anything like that. I think he handled it really well. I felt like Dunkirk, for me, sometimes I felt really bored. There was this like ticking noise, and that was like the whole.
That had action in it, which is the funny part.
yeah. But this was like actually really fun to see, and again. You feel scared in a way. It's not like Chernobyl scared. It's just really tense. It's like you're walking on a thin wire and you're about to fall. It's like that kind of thing, Yeah. And you also feel kind of toxic in a way because you know that this already happened. So it's like, oh shit, and we're already here. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, and I love also just seeing the development of the bomb itself. I think that's like cool. Something that you can only get from a movie as opposed to like a documentary or a novel, right? It's like people can describe it, but actually seeing it physically made and seeing it from the point of view of these theoretical physicists like Einstein and Oppenheimer, I think it just kind of lends to that authenticity, and there's just something about it. It just feels like really cool. Like I love when, directors aren't afraid to get their hands involved into these complex ideas like theoretical physics and all these cool like scientific aspects of it, seeing like development, seeing like all the equations and how it was built, right? Because it's a dual-sided coin or a dual-sided sword, whatever you want to call it, because it's a weapon at the end of the day, but it's also a new idea. And I think that's what Nolan is playing with, these juxtapositions of this new world, right? Like the atom bomb changed how we kind of perceive war and also just science in general. So it's like science is supposed to progress, but at the same time, this thing also brings us back a little bit as a species, because now like they always say like he gave us the power to destroy ourselves, right? So I think it's a cool contrast of like, it's like you said, it's not a black and white issue. It's very gray, because it is harmful, but it's also innovative in the same time, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. It's an awesome idea to actually deal with. And I think Nolan, he makes his films very entertaining, but also digestible. That's how he's such a great director. And he really does respect his audience. I appreciate that, while also adding his own tone and flair to the movies. And again, I think my only criticism really is just the music was overpowering the dialogue a lot of times. But this movie for sure is worth seeing in IMAX. I wouldn't see it any other way. I definitely think you guys should definitely see it in IMAX.
I want to be vaporized when I go there.
You definitely will. There was like a jump scare. It kind of sounded like the Beirut explosion, where it was just all quiet and silence and everything was bright and everyone was at all looking at this thing. And then moments later, Cillian Murphy's Oppenheimer says the famous quote, and then a big explosion happens, and it was the loudest noise I ever heard in any theater. I wish the first Godzilla movie had that right when he first came out. I was like, they must have put the volume down for Godzilla, but for this, they ramped it all the way up. It was amazing.
Like Sarah Connor's dream. I was like the skeleton holding onto the fence, like like burning and shit.
Another thing I would say is if you do not choose to actually see this movie in theaters, and one day, like for somehow you're watching this, I definitely would suggest buying this movie on Blu-ray, the physical copy, because Nolan even commented saying that it's more uncompressed. When you see it in streaming, it's a little bit more compressed, and the colors and stuff like that looks a little different. So you definitely want to see this movie how it was intended in the theaters. But if you don't choose to, get the Blu-ray when it eventually comes out in a couple of months or so. Yeah. So do you have any other final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah. I don't know how Barbie's gonna live up to this expectation.
I heard not too good. There's a lot of controversy. Well,
I think
we're
it's
gonna do a review
cool, though.
Yeah,
we have these two, and that's another juxtaposition is these two very different films, and we'll talk about that when we get to Barbie. But I think it's funny that Cillian even kind of like promoted this. It's not even like a rivalry. It's like a cooperation in a way. I just think this whole trend is really funny and great. But for the film itself, yeah, I think it was awesome. Of course, it's everything you'd expect from Nolan. He manages to outdo himself in every film that he puts out, and I can't imagine what his next film would be. Just going off of this feels like one of his like biggest movies so far, and I'm not even talking about just runtime. I feel like this ensemble cast. How do you beat that? Yeah, he just goes over the top, but in such a great way, and he's such a great filmmaker. Like you said, like. I appreciate like all the little techniques that he does, and he respects his audience, of course, and he respects film a lot, and I think that's why he's one of the most renowned directors of his time, because everything he puts into his movies is so made with so much authenticity. So if I had to rate this movie, I'll probably give it 10 out of 10 for me. How would you rate it?
10 out of 10. Do you know how to say 10 out of 10 in Sanskrit?
No, what is it?
Okay, me neither. You guys listen in the comments. Any of you freaks, let us know in the comments below how to say. If you do, I'll freak out. Sure. But it has to be like phonics, kind of like the.
If I could go off the Richter scale, that's what what I would give this movie.
There you go. Well, yeah, going off the Richter scale, I'll give it like 100. But really here, I'll give it like a I'll give it a 10 out of 10 for sure. I think it was a great movie. Definitely check this out in IMAX and IMAX alone. That is our review for Oppenheimer, now playing in theaters, guys. As I always say, if you're new to this channel, please actually like this video. We need help. We're getting close to 500 subscribers. We cannot wait. Things are changing. It's coming around. The world is starting to notice. I feel like Joker right now. But yeah, leave a like, comment. What's your favorite moments from Oppenheimer? And Dylan, why don't you take us away?
Yeah, for sure. We have a lot of content coming your way. Like we said in our Big Clone Tyrone review, we have a San Diego Comic-Con vlog coming out since we were just there this past week. It was really fun. I can't wait for you guys to see it because we did so much. Our feet are killing us.
Oh my goodness.
I'm having PTSD just thinking about all those lines. But yeah, it was really fun. If you guys are new to the channel, I welcome you, and I'm glad that for all our older subscribers, thank you for sticking up with us. We really appreciate it. I'm fucking up my words again, but I really appreciate you guys for staying with us and being so loyal to the channel and helping us out any way you can. Leave a like, sub, comment, anything helps the channel. But for sure, thank you guys so much, and until then, thanks for having lunch with us.
See you guys.